How safe can a town really be when its darkest secret is hidden just beneath the floorboards? Greenfield, Georgia, was the kind of place where neighbors waved on Sundays and porch swings creaked in the summer air. To outsiders, it seemed quiet, almost untouched by the chaos of the world. But one night, that illusion cracked. Sheriff Marcus Johnson had handled his share of small-town troubles in 20 years of service. Most nights ended with paperwork, a speeding ticket, or calming someone who had one drink too many. Yet on this night, the call that reached the dispatcher was different. The woman on the line was not drunk, not confused, not exaggerating. Her voice shook with terror. "There's a child. She's locked up down there in a cage. You have to come quick. She's not moving much. Please hurry." The dispatcher sat up straighter, signaling to the nearest officer. Within seconds, the report came through Marcus's radio. He was still nursing lukewarm coffee when the words hit his ears. A cage. A child. Basement. His body tensed. Deputy Jamal Carter slid into the passenger seat of the cruiser, his eyes wide. "Sheriff Dispatch says it's serious. Neighbor claims she saw a little hand through the basement window." Marcus didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. The address was familiar County Line and Ashbury, a weathered stretch of road lined with sagging porches and broken mailboxes. The house in question belonged to David Wilkins. A man in his early 40s, quiet, solitary, never gave the law much trouble. Folks said he'd taken in a foster child recently, but in Greenfield, nobody asked too many questions. The cruiser slowed to a stop in front of the house. The porch light flickered weakly, casting a sickly glow across peeling paint. Everything else was silent. Too silent. Marcus stepped out, boots crunching the gravel, and motioned for Jamal to follow. They approached the door. Jamal knocked firmly. "Sheriff's Department. Open up." No answer. For a moment, only the faint hum of cicadas. Then from inside, a raspy cough. A whimper. Marcus drew his weapon. "Probable cause," he muttered. One strong kick splintered the old wood. The smell hit them instantly, stale sweat, sour liquor, neglect. Empty bottles rolled across the floor as they stepped inside, flashlights slicing through the dark. A sound reached them. A faint scraping like nails against metal. It led to a narrow door beneath the staircase, locked. Jamal leaned in, ear pressed close. Movement. "She's in there." Marcus's pulse hammered. He kicked once, twice. On the third blow, the door gave way. Cold air spilled out, thick with damp and mold. A narrow staircase spiraled into darkness. They descended, flashlights up, and then they saw it. In the center of the concrete floor stood a cage. Heavy bars no larger than a dog kennel. Inside, curled into herself, was a little girl. Thin, trembling hair, tangled lips cracked. Her skin seemed to sag against her small bones. She looked barely alive. Marcus knelt beside the cage, voice soft, despite the rage boiling in his chest. "Sweetheart, it's okay. We're here now." The girl flinched hard, covering her face. Jamal whispered, horrified, "Jesus!" Footsteps thundered above them. A voice slurred with alcohol bellowed, "I told you to stay out of my house, David." Wilkins stormed down the stairs, shirt half-buttoned, eyes bloodshot, breath thick with cheap whiskey. His words were a roar. "She's my daughter. You got no right." Marcus rose slowly, weapon still lowered but grip steady. "You adopted her." "Damn right." "I did," David spat. "Kid's trouble. No one else wanted her. I'm doing what I gotta do to keep her in line." "She's 6, Jamal snapped. "She bites. She screams. That cage is for her own good." David's voice cracked, defensive, angry. Marcus's eyes sharpened. "Step away from the stairs, sir." For a moment, David hesitated, swaying in drunken pride. Then he laughed, bitterly, raising his hands. "Y'all don't get it. Not your problem anymore." Jamal moved quickly, cuffing him and shoving him against the wall. David cursed, but the fight was gone. Marcus turned back to the cage. He forced the latch rust grinding against his fingers. "Aaliyah," he whispered, remembering the name from paperwork. The girl's eyes flickered at the sound, wide, terrified. "Can I carry you out of here?" he asked gently. She didn't move, didn't speak, only trembled. Marcus's voice softened further. "It's okay. You're safe." Slowly, carefully, he lifted her tiny frame into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her head lolling against his shoulder. As they climbed the stairs, Aaliyah's eyes locked on David. Her body went rigid, face pale as paper. She whispered hoarsely, "Oh, no." Marcus pressed her close. "It's over," he promised. "He's not going to hurt you anymore." Outside porch lights flicked on along the street. Neighbors peeked from their doors, hands covering mouths. Paramedics rushed in as Marcus carried Aaliyah out into the flashing sirens. David screamed from the cruiser, still cursing, still denying. But Marcus didn't flinch. He handed the child gently to the EMTs. "She's dehydrated. Check for fractures. Keep her calm." As the ambulance doors shut, Marcus stood frozen in the strobe of red and blue. For now, Aaliyah was safe. But deep in his gut, he knew this was only the beginning. The cage was more than iron bars. It was the start of a much darker truth, one that would test everything he believed about justice, community, and silence. The hospital room smelled of disinfectant and something faintly metallic. Machines hummed quietly, wires ran across white sheets, and in the middle of it all lay Aaliyah. Her body looked almost swallowed by the bed. Electrodes dotted her chest, monitoring a heartbeat that thudded far too fast for someone so small. Sheriff Marcus Johnson stood at the window, arms folded, staring through the glass at the parking lot below. He had seen wrecks, overdoses, even homicides, but never this. Not a 6-year-old locked in a cage like an animal. His chest rose and fell with controlled fury. The door creaked open. Nurse Latoya Harris entered, her face tired but kind. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who had seen too much suffering and refused to give up on compassion. She adjusted the IV and looked at Marcus. "She's stable. No broken bones, but bruises everywhere. Ribs, back, legs. Some look weeks old. She's severely dehydrated and malnourished. Skin infections too. Trauma-related hair loss." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Has she spoken?" Latoya shook her head. "Not a word since you brought her in. Not to anyone. She just flinches." Marcus approached the bed, his boots heavy against the linoleum. He lowered himself into the chair beside her. Aaliyah's eyes were half open, fixed on the ceiling, but not really seeing. Her small hands twitched now and then, as if remembering invisible bars. Latoya's voice softened. "Child services should be here within the hour." Marcus turned sharply. "Child services after what I saw tonight? You really think they'll protect her?" Latoya hesitated, then lowered her tone. "I've seen them drop the ball before, especially when the guardian has adoption papers and a clean record." "Wilkins won't have a clean record much longer," Marcus growled. Her eyes met his, steady and unflinching. "He might still walk. Cases like this, when the victim doesn't speak, they get lost in the system." The words sank into Marcus's chest like stones. He clenched his jaw, forcing down the anger. He could not show it here, not in front of Aaliyah. He leaned closer to the bed, his voice barely more than a whisper. "You're safe now, sweetheart. No more cages, no more bad dreams." A single tear rolled down the child's cheek. That was the only response. Later that morning, the sunlight broke weakly through the clouds, throwing a dull glow across the hospital parking lot. Marcus sat in a plastic chair with coffee gone cold in his hands. A knock came at the door. A tall woman stepped in, hair pulled into a tight bun blazer, pressed expression flat. "Sheriff Johnson," he stood. "Yes." "Melanie Grant." Georgia Division of Family and Children's Services. She opened a binder, eyes flicking briefly toward the bed. That's Aaliyah, 6 years old. Guardian is David Wilkins. He claims legal adoption. Marcus's voice sharpened. Claims he had her locked in a cage. Melanie's face did not change. We received a report about Wilkins 6 months ago. Anonymous. Not enough evidence to pursue. Let me guess. Case closed, Marcus muttered. She ignored the comment. If the girl doesn't testify, it's not that simple. We work with what can be proven in court. Marcus took a step forward, lowering his voice. She was in a cage. That's not a gray area. That's criminal. I understand your passion, Sheriff, but our procedures are clear. For now, she'll be placed in emergency foster care until a full assessment can be made. Marcus did not hesitate. LaToya Harris. She's a registered foster parent. Her home's been approved for years. She's the only person Aaliyah has looked at without fear. Melanie finally paused, tapping her pen against the binder. I'll note the recommendation. An hour later, with discharge papers signed, LaToya carried Aaliyah out wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Marcus walked beside them to the old Ford sedan waiting in the lot. He rested a hand lightly on the car door as LaToya buckled the girl into the back seat. Aaliyah's wide eyes turned toward Marcus. Her voice came so softly, he almost missed it. Are you going to leave me? The words pierced him deeper than any courtroom debate or police report ever could. He crouched beside her, locking eyes. No, Aaliyah. I'm not going anywhere. Her lip quivered. She did not smile, but she gave the smallest nod. It was the beginning of something fragile, a thread of trust woven out of terror. Back at the station, Marcus spread Wilkins's thin file across his desk. It was disturbingly empty. Aside from the anonymous report 6 months prior, there was nothing. No school records, no pediatric visits, no photographs, no background checks on the adoption. It made no sense. He called Jamal into the office. I want everything on Wilkins. Who placed Aaliyah with him? Who signed off? Questioned the neighbors. Any history? Any rumors? Got it. Jamal nodded. And get me the neighbor who made the 911 call. I want to talk to her myself. By late afternoon, Marcus was knocking on the door of the house next to Wilkins's. A short woman with sharp features opened the door, clutching a half-empty coffee cup. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. You the one who called? Marcus asked. She nodded nervously. Yes. I wasn't sure at first, but I kept hearing things at night. Banging, crying. I thought maybe it was the television. But last night I took out the trash and saw something move near the basement window. A hand. Tiny. I thought I imagined it, but then I heard the crying. Did you ever see the girl before? No. He always kept the blinds closed, told folks she was shy, said she had tantrums, trouble making friends. Nobody questioned it. Marcus rubbed his temples. Too many people had not questioned anything. He looked past her to the Wilkins house. Quiet now, sealed with yellow tape. But silence in Greenfield no longer felt like peace. It felt like complicity. Marcus thanked Denise and walked back to his cruiser. The sun dipped low shadows stretching long across cracked pavement. In his gut, he knew this was only the surface. One man and one cage could not exist without others choosing not to see. Something darker was hiding under Greenfield's polite smiles and Sunday greetings, and Marcus Johnson was not going to look away. Not this time. The sheriff's office was quiet, except for the hum of old fluorescent lights and the scratch of pens on paper. Marcus Johnson sat at his desk, surrounded by files that should have been thick with information. Instead, Wilkins's adoption paperwork looked like a skeleton stripped clean. No school records, no pediatric visits, no family photographs. Nothing that suggested a child had ever lived a normal life in that house. Only a few stamped documents with signatures that looked hurried, almost careless. Jamal Carter walked in carrying another folder. I pulled everything I could from the county records, he said, dropping it on the desk. It's thin, Sheriff. Too thin. Marcus flipped through the papers, his frown deepening. The adoption had gone through an agency called Bright Futures Adoption. Out of state. Colorado. Strange. Why would a man in rural Georgia go halfway across the country to adopt a child through a small private agency? Did you check with DFCS? Marcus asked. Yeah, Jamal replied. They said they were never notified. No transfer of case files. No follow-up visits. It's like she just appeared in his house. Marcus tapped the folder, agitation rising. That's not an accident. Either someone forged these documents or someone got paid to look the other way. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. The cage had been real, the bruises undeniable. But the system that allowed it to happen, that was the deeper crime. Get me the name of the caseworker who signed this, Marcus said. Jamal nodded. Already on it. That evening, Marcus returned to the neighborhood. He walked the cracked sidewalks, clipboard in hand, knocking on doors. He needed to know what people had seen, or rather what they had chosen not to see. At the third house, an older man in a worn Braves cap opened the door. Hank Morrison, retired mechanic, had lived next to Wilkins for nearly 8 years. Sheriff Hank said cautiously, rubbing his hands on his jeans. Didn't expect you here. Evening, Hank. Just got a couple of questions about your neighbor. You mean Peter? Hank scratched the back of his neck. Heard about the arrest. Didn't think he had it in him. Marcus studied him. You ever see a little girl around his place? Hank shifted uncomfortably. Well, he said he took in a foster kid. Said she had trouble adjusting. Emotional problems. Screamed a lot. Did you ever hear her scream once or twice? Figured it was part of the adjustment. Peter always said she was a handful. Never saw any bruises. She wasn't outside much. Did you ever see her play in the yard, walk to school? Hank hesitated, then shook his head. No, just figured he homeschooled her. That's common now, right? Marcus wrote it down, jaw tight. You didn't think it was strange she never left the house? Hank looked away. I guess I did. But folks don't like accusing neighbors without proof. Did you ever hear anything from the basement? Silence. Hank's eyes flicked sideways. Yeah, sometimes. Thought maybe he had a dog down there. Never asked. Marcus closed his notebook. Thank you for your time. He moved on to the next house. The story was the same. Peter had seemed quiet, friendly enough. People believed him when he said the girl was troubled. No one asked questions. No one looked closer. By the time Marcus returned to his cruiser, exhaustion pressed heavy on his shoulders. The sun had dipped low, leaving Maple Lane cloaked in shadows. Porch lights blinked on neighbors, waving politely as if nothing had happened. But Marcus saw it for what it was. This wasn't just apathy. It was complicity. A town choosing comfort over confrontation. Silence over truth. Back at the station, Jamal was waiting with new information. Got the name Sheriff. The caseworker who signed the adoption was listed as Karen Elmhurst. But guess what? Marcus raised an eyebrow. She doesn't exist. No license number, no office records. The address on the file leads to a vacant lot in Denver. Marcus's chest tightened. So the whole agency might be a shell. Looks that way. And if that's true, Aaliyah wasn't just neglected. She was trafficked through paper lies. Marcus dropped into his chair, staring at the wall. It made sense now. The missing school records, the neighbor's silence, the forged documents. This wasn't a single broken man. This was a system designed to bury children in cages. He looked at Jamal, his voice steady but fierce. We dig deeper. Find everything on Bright Futures. Owners, board members, financials. I want to know who's profiting off this. Jamal nodded, already reaching for the phone. Marcus leaned back, rubbing his temples. The case had started with a desperate 911 call. Now it was leading him into shadows darker than he had imagined. And in Greenfield, where neighbors smiled on Sundays and looked the other way at night, Marcus Johnson was about to shine a light that would make everyone uncomfortable. The silence of a town was no longer safe. It was evidence. Night had settled heavy over Greenfield, but Sheriff Marcus Johnson's office buzzed with restless energy. The lamp on his desk cast long shadows across piles of papers, folders spread like puzzle pieces that refused to fit. Jamal Carter leaned against the filing cabinet, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, I need records on Bright Future's adoption. Any complaints, lawsuits, anything you can dig up?" Jamal said. He scribbled notes, then lowered the phone. "They're already under investigation in Colorado. At least 4 homes they placed kids in were later shut down for abuse." Marcus's eyes narrowed. And no one caught this before private agency minimal oversight. They targeted counties with overloaded public systems, pitched themselves as a fast-track solution. "Get a child in a home today," they said. Jamal shook his head. It was a sales pitch, and people bought it. Marcus's fingers tapped the desk. "So how the hell did Wilkins get Aaliyah?" "There's a name listed on the paperwork. Nathan Greer, former child psychologist. Lost his license a few years back for unethical conduct." Marcus looked up sharply. "What kind of conduct?" "Falsified reports. Claimed he could cure trauma in adopted children. Pushed for aggressive behavioral treatments." He went quiet for a while, then popped up again as a consultant for Bright Futures. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the pieces clicking into place in his mind. A forged caseworker, a fake agency, a discredited psychologist. It wasn't a coincidence. "Where is he now?" Marcus asked. "Runs a private facility in South Carolina. Not licensed. Calls it a healing retreat for troubled youth." Marcus's jaw tightened. "We need to find out if he has other children like Aaliyah." Jamal's voice was low. "That's what I'm afraid of." The next morning, Marcus drove through Greenfield, watching as ordinary life unfolded. Parents walked kids to school, shop owners swept sidewalks, neighbors waved politely. Yet beneath every smile he saw shadows. How many of them had heard something? How many had looked away at the hospital he checked in on Aaliyah? LaToya sat beside the bed, spooning small bites of oatmeal toward the girl. Aaliyah barely touched it, her eyes fixed on the corner of the room, as if expecting bars to appear again. "She still won't eat much," LaToya said quietly. "She waits for me to take a bite first. Like she doesn't trust the food unless someone else tastes it." Marcus nodded, his heart heavy. "She's scared. She's been trained to expect pain." LaToya's voice sharpened. "This girl isn't just a file, Sheriff. If they try to move her again, they'll have to go through me." "They won't," Marcus said firmly. "Not while I'm here." He crouched beside the bed. "Aaliyah, do you remember what happened when we found you?" Her small fingers gripped the blanket. For a moment he thought she might speak, but she only whispered 4 words. He said, "I'm broken." Marcus felt the words like a punch. He forced his voice steady. "You're not broken. Not even close." For the first time, her eyes flicked toward him. It was brief, but it was something. Later that afternoon, Marcus sat with Jamal in the squad car parked in front of Wilkins's empty house. The yellow tape fluttered in the wind. "You ever think about how many people failed her before we even knew her name?" Jamal asked quietly. Marcus stared at the house. "Too many. And it won't stop unless we rip this open." The radio crackled. Jamal picked it up, listened, then turned to Marcus. "I got something else. Financial transfers linked to Bright Futures. Payments to Greer's retreat. Looks like more than one child ended up there." Marcus's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Then that's where we go." The road to South Carolina stretched long and empty, lined with pines and abandoned gas stations. Marcus drove in silence, the file on Greer resting on the seat beside him. The more he read, the worse it stank. Reports of children vanishing from school rolls, parents signing private agreements. No oversight, no accountability. Finally, a dirt road branched off the highway, marked only by a crooked mailbox. Riverside Wellness Farm. The driveway was lined with trees, the air unnaturally still. At the end stood a 2-story farmhouse surrounded by broken fencing and rusted swings. A woman in her 50s hung laundry on a line, pausing when she spotted the cruiser. Marcus stepped out, flashing his badge. "Morning, ma'am. Sheriff Marcus Johnson, Greenfield County, Georgia. I'm here about Nathan Greer." Her eyes flicked nervously to the house. "He's inside." "What's this about children?" Marcus said. His voice was calm but carried weight. "And whether they're safe here." Before she could answer, the front door opened. A tall man with thinning hair stepped out, dressed casually, his smile too perfect. "You must be Sheriff Johnson," he said smoothly. "Nathan Greer. I heard someone was asking about me." Marcus ignored the handshake Greer offered. "I'm looking into the placement of a child named Aaliyah. She ended up in a cage in my county. Your name is on the paperwork." Greer's smile didn't falter, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "That's tragic. But I haven't worked directly with placements in over a year. I consult on therapeutic care now, farm-based activities, routine. It's all legal." "Your name's on the documents," Marcus said flatly. "I was listed as a reference. Probably a clerical mistake. If someone forged my name, that's not my responsibility." Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You lost your psychology license for falsifying reports. Now you're running a retreat for vulnerable kids without oversight. Can I speak to the children here?" Greer folded his arms. "Do you have a warrant?" "No." Marcus's voice hardened. "But I have cause. Then I'll have to respectfully decline." Marcus's gaze shifted past him toward an upstairs window. For a split second, a curtain moved. A small shadow ducked away. His stomach twisted. "Is Aaliyah the only one?" Marcus asked quietly. Greer didn't answer. Marcus turned toward the car. "I'll be back, and next time I won't be alone." As he drove away, Greer's voice followed him. "Sheriff stories don't win. Paper does." Marcus gripped the wheel, his jaw set. Paper had built the cage around Aaliyah, but it was going to take more than paper to break it open. Sheriff Marcus Johnson did not sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table with the file on Nathan Greer spread wide before him. Every page smelled of deceit. Greer's name appeared on adoption forms, psychological assessments, and invoices for services no real agency would ever approve. Each document was a doorway into darkness. By dawn, Marcus was back at the station. Jamal Carter arrived carrying coffee and a stack of fresh printouts. "Sheriff, you need to see this," he said. Bright Futures routed money through shell companies. Some of it went straight to Greer's so-called retreat. Marcus flipped through the sheets. The numbers were undeniable. So children were placed in abusive homes, and Greer was paid to look the other way. "Or to orchestrate it," Jamal said grimly. Marcus grabbed his coat. "We are not waiting for permission. We are going back to South Carolina." The two men drove hours along narrow highways. The air inside the cruiser was heavy with determination. Marcus barely spoke. His mind replayed Aaliyah's small whisper. "I am broken." Those words burned hotter than anger. They were fuel. The sun dipped low when they turned onto the dirt road. The crooked mailbox marked the entrance to Riverside Wellness Farm. The same farmhouse came into view, its white paint flaking its swing set rusted with neglect. This time Marcus did not approach casually. He and Jamal stepped out together, badges visible, eyes sharp. The woman who had been hanging laundry the day before froze in the yard. Her eyes darted toward the house, then back to the officers. "Where is Greer?" Marcus asked firmly. Before she could answer, the front door opened. Nathan Greer stepped onto the porch, smiling as if he were greeting old friends. Sheriff Johnson. Back so soon, Marcus climbed the steps until he was eye to eye with him. I saw a child in that window yesterday. Where is that child now? Greer's smile never faltered. We have several children here, Sheriff, all placed with parental consent. They're safe, engaged in therapeutic routines. Gardening, animal care. Nothing illegal. Jamal's jaw tightened. Safe locked behind curtains, Greer spread his hands. Some of them are shy. Some traumatized. Privacy is part of healing. Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Greer could hear. Privacy does not look like fear. Greer's eyes flickered, but his tone remained smooth. You are outside your jurisdiction. Without a warrant, you cannot speak to any child here. That is the law. The law also says children cannot be bought and sold through forged papers, Marcus shot back. Greer's smile thinned. You cannot prove that. We will, Marcus said. And when we do, this place will be torn down brick by brick. For the first time, Greer's mask cracked. His eyes hardened. Sheriff, you think you are the first to come here? Others have tried. Federal inspectors, state workers. They left with nothing. Because stories do not hold in court. Paper does. And my paper is clean. Marcus's fists clenched at his sides. He imagined Aaliyah's face pale behind iron bars. He imagined more children hidden behind these walls. From inside the house came a sound. A faint thump. Then a child's muffled cry. Marcus's heart kicked against his ribs. Jamal took a step toward the door, but Greer raised a hand. You enter without a warrant, and I will have you arrested for trespass. Marcus's voice was cold. Every second you keep them silent, you add weight to the charges waiting for you. Greer leaned forward, lowering his voice. Sheriff, do you know what silence really is? It is protection. Neighbors stay quiet. Officials sign what I hand them. Families choose not to ask questions. Silence is my shield, and you will not break it. Marcus stared at him, memorizing every word, every expression. This was not just arrogance. It was confession dressed as pride. He turned abruptly, motioning Jamal back toward the cruiser. Jamal looked at him in disbelief. Sheriff, we cannot just walk away. Marcus opened the driver's door. We are not walking away. We are building a case he cannot escape. As they pulled down the dirt road, Marcus dialed his phone. Get me the state attorney's office, he said. We are opening an investigation. Health code zoning violations, tax records, child welfare. I want everything on Riverside Wellness Farm, and I want warrants. The line crackled, then a voice responded. That will take time. Then work faster, Marcus snapped, because children are running out of time. The call ended. The road stretched ahead, but Marcus barely saw it. His vision was filled with the shadow that had ducked behind that curtain, the sound of a muffled cry inside a farmhouse pretending to be a sanctuary. He gripped the wheel until his knuckles turned white. He thinks silence is his shield, he muttered. We are going to turn it into evidence. Jamal glanced at him. You really believe we can crack this open? Marcus's eyes stayed on the horizon. We have no choice. For Aaliyah. For whoever else is still trapped. The cruiser sped forward into the darkening night. Behind them, the farmhouse grew smaller, but its shadow stretched long across the road. Marcus Johnson knew this was no longer a case about one child. It was about every child swallowed by silence. And silence in his town and beyond was about to be broken. The courthouse smelled of varnished wood and paper aged by years of whispered arguments. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, painting pale stripes across the polished floor. Sheriff Marcus Johnson sat in the front row, his hands folded jaw tight. He had been in courtrooms before, but never with stakes this high. At the defense table sat David Wilkins. His hair was combed neatly, his suit cheap but pressed. He looked smaller than he had in the basement that night, but the arrogance clung to him. He whispered to his attorney, a man with sharp eyes, who scanned the room as though every juror could be bent with a glance. Judge Raymond Cates, an older man with silver glasses, adjusted the docket in front of him. His voice carried calmly but firmly. Today, we hear testimony from the minor victim in the state versus David Wilkins. The witness is 6 years old. Proceed with care. Assistant District Attorney Kelly Turner stood her presence sharp but steady. Your Honor, the child is ready. The room seemed to hold its breath as the side door opened. Aaliyah walked in, her small hand held by a court-appointed advocate. She wore a soft yellow dress, chosen by Nurse Latoya Harris, who followed a step behind and was allowed to sit nearby for comfort. A hush fell over the courtroom. Every shuffle of paper stopped, every cough stilled. Aaliyah's eyes darted like a bird's, scanning faces, scanning shadows. She climbed into the witness chair, her legs too short to reach the floor. Judge Cates leaned forward, his tone gentle. You are safe here, Aaliyah. Can you tell me your name? Her voice was almost a whisper. Aaliyah. How old are you? 6. The judge nodded. Thank you. He gestured for the attorney to proceed. Adia. Turner approached slowly, her voice warm. Hi, Aaliyah. Do you remember me? I came to visit with Sheriff Johnson. Aaliyah gave the faintest nod. I know this is hard, Turner continued. We just want to understand what happened. You can use words, or if it's easier you can point or draw. Whatever makes you comfortable. Aaliyah's hands gripped the edges of the chair. Her breathing quickened, but then she spoke. He put me in the basement. The courtroom went silent. Turner crouched slightly to meet her eyes. Who did? Aaliyah raised a trembling finger and pointed across the room. Him. All eyes turned to David Wilkins. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Did he hurt you? Turner asked gently. Aaliyah nodded. He yelled. He didn't give me food. And he locked the cage. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Marcus felt his chest tighten. It was the word no one wanted to hear from a child, but the word that mattered most. Turner kept her voice steady. Can you tell us why you didn't tell anyone before? Aaliyah's eyes lowered. Her voice broke. Because he said nobody would believe me, and I didn't know I could be safe. Tears slid down Latoya's face as she sat watching, hands clenched tight. The defense attorney rose slowly, his tone calm, almost patronizing. Aaliyah, did Mr. Wilkins ever say he loved you? She blinked. Sometimes. Did he ever give you toys? Food? Read to you? Yes. But only when people were watching. The lawyer's voice oozed with suggestion. Could it be that you misunderstood his intentions? That maybe he was trying to help you? And it just felt scary. For the first time, Aaliyah's voice rose, cutting through the room like glass. Helping doesn't hurt. Helping doesn't lock you. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the judge leaned back, eyes heavy with the weight of her words. That will be enough, Judge Cates said firmly. The witness has done something very brave today. Turner nodded. Your Honor, I request her statement be entered into evidence. Granted, the judge replied. The gavel struck once, but its echo was drowned by the memory of Aaliyah's words. Helping doesn't lock you. After she was escorted out, Marcus found her in the waiting room, curled up on a couch beside Latoya. When he entered, her small face lifted. I did it, she said softly. You sure did, Marcus replied, kneeling to meet her eye level. Will he go away forever? Marcus hesitated. He could not promise forever, but he could promise safety. He will never hurt you again. That I swear. Aaliyah leaned forward suddenly and wrapped her arms around him. Marcus froze for a moment, then held her gently, as if she might break. Back in the courtroom, Wilkins sat pale and sweating. The smirk was gone. His attorney whispered furiously, but the air had shifted. The jurors had heard the truth not from papers or police reports, but from the voice of a child too young to lie and too brave to stay silent. When Marcus left the courthouse that evening, the sky was painted with streaks of fading gold. People in town had already begun to talk. They stopped him at the diner at the gas station, whispering questions, asking how they could help. The silence that had once covered Greenfield was beginning to crack. But Marcus knew the fight was far from over. Wilkins was only the beginning. Nathan Greer and bright futures still loomed in the shadows, and as the courthouse doors closed behind him, Marcus promised himself one thing. He would not rest until every shadow was dragged into the light. News of the courtroom spread through Greenfield like fire on dry grass. The words of a 6-year-old girl, trembling but fierce, echoed across town, "Helping does not lock you." The diner buzzed with hushed conversations. The gas station clerk shook his head in disbelief. Even the church congregation, known for polite smiles and folded hands, began to murmur about the darkness hiding in plain sight. Marcus Johnson had lived in this town his whole life, but he had never seen people stop him in the street with questions in their eyes. Some asked how they had missed the signs. Others wanted to know how they could help. For the first time in years, silence no longer felt safe. It felt guilty. Back at the station, Jamal Carter leaned over, his desk phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, sir, I'll send the files over. Every report, every affidavit." He hung up and looked at Marcus. That was the FBI. They are officially opening a joint investigation with the state attorney's office. Marcus leaned forward. "They believe us now. They have no choice. Between Aaliyah's testimony, the forged documents, and the financial transfers we tracked, it is enough to widen the case." Marcus's face stayed stern, though a flicker of relief moved across his eyes. "Good, because Greer is still out there. And I saw another child in that window." Jamal nodded. "Then we are not done. Not even close." 2 days later, Greenfield gathered for a candlelight vigil in the town square. Families stood shoulder to shoulder, each person holding a small flame against the dark. LaToya Harris spoke softly into a microphone, her voice carrying more weight than any sermon. "These children are not just numbers in a file. They are lives bruised but not broken. Tonight, we remember them, and we promise not to look away again." Marcus stood at the edge of the crowd, the glow of candles flickering across his badge. Aaliyah was there too, wrapped in a blanket, clutching LaToya's hand. She did not speak, but she watched. Her wide eyes reflected dozens of tiny flames, each one proof that she was not invisible anymore. Reporters arrived the next morning. Cameras flashed outside the courthouse, microphones crowded the sheriff's station. Questions poured in: how many children were affected, who was responsible, what would happen next. Marcus answered what he could, but he knew the truth was still buried deeper. Bright Futures was not just a crooked agency, it was a machine. In Atlanta, Marcus sat across from Special Agent Desiree Vaughn of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. She spoke quickly, her words clipped but confident. "Your instincts were right, Sheriff. Bright Futures is a front. Greer and his associates funneled kids into private arrangements, most without state oversight. We have traced at least 3 more children in nearby counties who vanished off official rolls." Marcus's jaw tightened. Vanished, no school records, no medical files, just gone. He leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then this is not just neglect. This is trafficking." Vaughn met his gaze. "That is exactly what we are looking at." When Marcus returned to Greenfield, storm clouds gathered overhead. Rain streaked the windshield of his cruiser as he pulled into LaToya's driveway. Inside, Aaliyah sat at the kitchen table, crayons spread before her. She looked up when Marcus entered. On the paper was a house with a tree beside it, and in the corner a dark box scribbled in heavy strokes. "Bars again?" Marcus asked gently. Aaliyah nodded, then pointed at the sky above the drawing. A small shape hovered there almost like a key. "What is that?" he asked. Her voice was quiet but clear. "That is you. You had the key." The words caught in his throat. He crouched beside her. "I will carry that key for as long as you need me to." Latoya watched from the doorway, eyes soft but fierce. "She is healing," she said, "but it is slow, and it will not last if this system keeps failing kids like her." Marcus nodded. "That is why we will not stop here." The following week, subpoenas went out. Financial records, email chains, property deeds. The state attorney's office built a paper fortress, and Marcus supplied every brick he could. Witnesses came forward. Denise Walker gave a sworn statement about the night she saw a tiny hand against the window. A young IT student recovered fragments of deleted video from Wilkins's computer, showing Aaliyah's pale face behind bars. Piece by piece, the silence was being stripped away. But Greer did not stay quiet. Through lawyers and press releases, he painted himself as a healer, a misunderstood man trying to help troubled children. He insisted his retreat was legal, that every parent had given consent. He spoke of therapy, of opportunity, of structure. Marcus read the words in the paper and felt bile rise. "He is hiding behind their silence," he muttered. "But he is not going to hide forever." One night he returned home to find an envelope slid under his door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Written in block letters were 3 words: "Stop digging, Sheriff." Marcus stared at it, then crumpled it in his fist. The threat did not shake him. It confirmed he was hitting too close to the truth. The storm was no longer just in the clouds above Greenfield. It was gathering in courtrooms, in boardrooms, in the hearts of neighbors who had once looked away. And Marcus Johnson stood at its center, determined not to bend. For the first time in years, Greenfield was awake. But awakening came with a price. And Marcus knew that the next move would decide whether justice was a flicker of candlelight or a fire that burned through every cage built on silence. The weeks after the trial felt different in Greenfield. Where once neighbors had looked away, now they stopped in the street to talk. Parents checked in on each other's children, teachers held longer meetings, and the town square that had once been silent now buzzed with cautious but growing hope. Sheriff Marcus Johnson felt it every time he walked into the diner. People nodded at him not just out of politeness but out of gratitude. Yet he never let himself believe the work was finished. He knew Nathan Greer and his network still faced federal court, and other children had yet to be found. But for now, at least Aaliyah was safe. At Latoya Harris's modest yellow house, the rhythm of healing unfolded quietly. Aaliyah had begun eating more, though she still asked Latoya to taste every bite first. She slept with a small lamp on, unwilling to trust the dark. Some nights she woke crying, tangled in nightmares, but Latoya was always there, arms wrapping her tight, whispering that she was safe. One evening, Marcus stopped by after his shift. He found Aaliyah at the kitchen table with crayons scattered across the surface. She was drawing again. This time it was not a cage. It was a house with a wide door open to the sun. Beside the house stood 3 figures, a tall man, a woman with kind eyes, and a little girl holding both their hands. "Looks like family," Marcus said softly. Aaliyah looked up. For the first time, she gave him a small but certain smile. "It is," she whispered. Latoya wiped her hands on a dish towel, her voice tender but steady. She is finding her voice piece by piece. Marcus sat down beside Aaliyah. "That is beautiful," he said. "Do you know what it means?" She nodded. "It means no more cages." Marcus felt his throat tighten. He reached out, letting her place the drawing in his hands. He studied it as if it were a map to a world worth fighting for. The changes rippled beyond the walls of Latoya's home. The state of Georgia announced new oversight measures for adoption agencies. Mandatory home visits, third-party audits, stricter licensing requirements. Community workshops sprouted in churches and schools, teaching parents and children How to recognize warning signs, how to speak when silence seemed easier. Marcus spoke at one of those gatherings. Standing in front of townsfolk he had known his whole life, he held up Aaliyah's drawing. This, he said, voice firm but full of feeling, is why we cannot look away. A piece of paper can hide the truth, but a child's voice cannot. We owe it to them to listen. Always. The room was silent, then filled with quiet applause, the kind that came not from excitement, but from conviction. As months passed, the federal case against Greer built momentum. Marcus worked closely with Agent Vaughn and the state attorney, providing every file, every statement, every neighbor's testimony. The evidence stacked high. Greer's retreat was exposed as a fraud, his finances traced to hidden accounts, his network unraveled one thread at a time. When the indictment came, Marcus was there in the federal courthouse watching as Greer was led away in handcuffs. The man who had once smirked behind a farmhouse door now looked hollow, his shield of silence finally shattered. Back in Greenfield, life moved forward. One spring afternoon, Marcus returned to LaToya's porch. Aaliyah was sitting on the swing, feet dangling above the floorboards, a new sketchbook open on her lap. She waved when she saw him. "Want to see?" she asked shyly. He nodded, sitting beside her. She turned the pages. Each drawing told a story. A playground with children laughing. A school bus with windows wide open. A night sky filled with stars, no shadows lurking. At the last page she had written in careful letters, "We heal together." Marcus read the words aloud, his voice catching. "That is perfect." Aaliyah leaned against him, her small shoulder pressing into his side. "Am I still broken?" she asked quietly. Marcus placed a hand over hers. "No, sweetheart. You were never broken. You are strong, and you are loved." The swing creaked gently as the sun dipped lower, bathing the yard in warm light. For the first time, Marcus felt a measure of peace. The fight was not over, but the child who had once been silent in a cage was now drawing a world of open doors. That was victory enough to carry him into whatever battles lay ahead. True justice is not measured by convictions alone, but by the courage to listen when a child dares to speak. Silence can protect abusers, but compassion can break walls stronger than iron. Every time we choose to hear, we choose to protect, and that choice can change everything.